The fire crackled softly as Mark Dalton leaned back in a camping chair, his youngest daughter giggling with sticky marshmallows smeared across her cheeks. It was a cool Friday night, and the sky above the small Texas suburb was clear, dotted with stars for the Daltons. These little backyard fires had become a family tradition, something peaceful, something simple. Mark wasn't much for confrontation. An ex-firefighter turned paramedic. He valued quiet over chaos. And this little corner of the neighborhood had been quiet until Kendra Vaughn moved in 3 houses down. Just as his son tossed another log onto the flames, the silence was shattered by the sound of barking. Then footsteps on gravel. Then came the voice, sharp, nasal, and already angry. "Put that out." Immediately, Mark looked over his shoulder, confused. A woman in a bright reflective vest stood at the edge of his yard, arms crossed like she owned the place. Her name was Kendra Vaughn, the self-elected president of the local HOA. Without even saying hello, she marched forward, pulling a clipboard from under her arm. "This is a fire-free zone. It's been banned by the homeowners association. You're in violation." Mark stood up slowly, calm, controlled. He didn't raise his voice. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm not part of your HOA. This house was built before your community even existed. I never signed anything." Kendra's expression didn't change. She simply clicked her pen. "Your home borders the Ridgegrove community and falls under the new extension voted in last month. It includes your street now." Mark blinked. "Funny, no one told me." Kendra smiled thinly. "Consider this your notice." She turned, strutted back across the lawn, and disappeared into the shadows. The next morning, Mark found it, a citation, folded, sealed, and taped directly to his mailbox. It looked official, but it wasn't from the city. It was printed with the Ridgegrove HOA letterhead. A $500 fine for legal open flame within restricted zone. Mark chuckled, shook his head, and tossed the paper in the trash. He didn't think much more of it. Until the next evening, Mark was making coffee when he saw something strange on his security camera feed. Just after midnight, someone had walked into his yard, hooded, silent. They didn't take anything. They didn't break in, but they poured something, maybe water, into the fire pit, then left. He paused the footage, rewound, zoomed in there. A glimpse of a sparkly logo on the back of the hoodie, a circular crest. Ridgegrove HOA. Mark didn't laugh this time. On Sunday afternoon, Mark set up a small wooden sign next to his fire pit. It read, "Not an HOA member. Your rules don't apply here." He added a second, "Cameras on. Trespassers prosecuted." The response was faster than he expected. That evening, a neighbor, Tiffany Moore, knocked on his door. "Hey," she said, eyes wide, holding her phone. "You're not gonna believe this. Kendra was just at my house asking if I'd vouch that you've always followed HOA rules." Mark frowned. "Why would she want that?" She said she's putting together a record of habitual compliance to justify your inclusion in Ridgegrove. Tiffany whispered. It sounded shady, so I recorded it. Mark listened to the audio. Kendra was practically bragging. "If we can prove he's been cooperating this whole time, we can claim implied consent, then hit him with everything: fire ban, lawn code, exterior paint, mailbox height. By now, Mark knew this wasn't just about a backyard fire. Kendra had a plan, a power play, one that could cost him money, peace, and possibly legal trouble if she really had forged any paperwork. He picked up the citation he'd pulled from the trash, smoothed it out, and noticed something at the bottom, a signature that wasn't his. In shaky handwriting, it read, Mark Dalton. His name, signed, on a document he'd never seen before. He didn't smile anymore. The fire pit might have been small, but what Kendra had started, it was about to become a wildfire. Narrator voice drops slightly. So what would you do if your peaceful backyard tradition got you targeted by an HOA you never joined? Would you fight it? Or pay and stay quiet? This is just the beginning, because Mark's about to uncover just how deep this scheme really goes down the twist. It's something even the HOA didn't see coming. When Mark Dalton woke up Monday morning, the smell of smoke still clung faintly to the air, though his fire pit hadn't been touched since the mystery midnight visit. He made coffee and sat on the porch, watching a pair of squirrels chase each other across the fence line. Calm, quiet morning until the neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Screenshot style pop-up for viewers. HOA reminder. All fires are banned. Report violations immediately. Posted by Kendra Vaughn. Timestamp 6:40 to a Mark raised an eyebrow. The post was paired with a grainy photo of his backyard fire pit. Zoomed in. Low quality. Blurry but definitely his yard. In the comments, neighbors were split. Didn't think Mark was in Ridgegrove. He's always been respectful. Leave him alone. Rules are rules, people. He's endangering the community. It's a fire pit, not a napalm pit. Chill. Narrator. But this wasn't just some random HOA rule. This ban had a history, and like everything else Kendra touched, it started with her cat. 6 months earlier, Kendra's Siamese, Mr. Pom-Pom, had a meltdown during the 4th of July when a neighbor set off a few tame backyard fireworks, according to her. The cat nearly had a stroke from the stress. Kendra went door to door the next morning, circulating a petition to ban open flames and trauma-inducing noise. Only 8 homeowners signed out of 50. But that didn't stop her. At the next HOA meeting, which Mark hadn't attended because, again, he wasn't a member. Kendra pushed the vote through with barely enough board members present. Boom. Fire ban passed. But here's the thing. The rule explicitly stated it applied only to active Ridgegrove HOA members within recognized subdivision boundaries. That boundary didn't include Mark. Narrator voice shifts to sarcasm. Still, that didn't stop Kendra. Queen Kendra. Her kingdom didn't like exceptions. Later that day, Mark got a knock on his door. It was his neighbor, Greg Moore, husband of Tiffany. The VLOGGR. Greg had a GoPro strapped to his chest. You mind if I record this? He asked. We're documenting what's happening in case this gets uglier. Which, judging by Kendra's Facebook meltdown, it will. Mark nodded. Be my guest. Greg handed him a small manila envelope. Inside, printed photos from a security cam marked with timestamps. One showed a figure pouring liquid into Mark's fire pit. Another caught a flash of glitter on the hoodie. On the back, just visible, the HOA crest. Greg whispered, I think it was Eli, Kendra's husband. Yeah. He's usually just tagging along with her nonsense. But the guy's been sneaking around at night lately. I saw him near your fence a couple nights ago. Mark frowned. This wasn't just HOA overreach anymore. This was personal. That evening, Mark called Sheriff Langley. Narrator, Langley had been sheriff of Creekside County for over 20 years. He was no fan of HOA letters, especially not ones who thought they were above the law. Langley chuckled when Mark explained what was going on. Son, he said, HOA letters can huff and puff. But unless you sign papers, they can't fine you, ticket you, or rewrite your life. Got any paperwork proving you didn't join? Mark nodded. Title deed. No HOA clause. Bought the house before Ridgegrove even existed. Langley replied, perfect. Let them try you in court. I'll personally walk in and laugh. That comforted Mark until he checked his mailbox the next morning. A second envelope. Inside, A final notice citation. $750 fine. This time with a clause that read, failure to pay will result in further action, including legal escalation and potential lien filing against property. Narrator voice sharpens. It was signed again, this time not just with his forged signature, but a typed note at the bottom. You've been part of Ridgegrove community in behavior, if not in signature. Consider this a warning. But the truly chilling part, the return address wasn't from HOA headquarters. It was from Kendra's personal home address. Mark stared at the paper. This isn't about fire, he muttered. This is about control. He grabbed his toolbox, walked into the backyard, and began building something new. A permanent fire-safe pit surrounded by stone, with clearly posted safety-certified signs and burn permits from the local fire department. If they were going to play games, he was going to play smarter. Hook ending with suspenseful music swell. That night, as Mark adjusted the camera angles on his new motion sensors, he caught something else. Another shadow. Someone sneaking up to the fire pit again. But this time, they weren't carrying water, they were carrying a folder. A folder marked confidential HOA docs. Narrator, you think this is just about a fire? Nah. This war is just getting started. Someone's forging documents, faking rules, and sneaking through the night with files that don't belong to them. The folder was thick, stamped confidential Ridgegrove HOA internal use only, and Mark Dalton found it lying on his fire pit. Not on the ground. Not near his porch, right there, sitting atop the stone rim like it had been delivered. He brought it inside like it was radioactive, laid it on the kitchen table, and stared at it with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. His daughter peeked around the corner. Are we being sued again? She asked. Mark smirked. Not yet. But I think the HOA just made a big mistake. Narrator. Inside the folder was a gold mine of bureaucratic insanity. A full list of future expansions, including hand-drawn boundary maps with highlighter scribbles and sticky notes. And there it was. His street Oak Ridge Lane circled in red marker, with a note that read, push this through next meeting. If anyone resists, use behavior-based inclusion clause. Mark blinked. Behavior-based inclusion? What kind of HOA fantasy novel were these people writing? There was also a page titled Non-Compliant Properties, Targeted Monitoring. His name was at the top, underlined. Just below it, 2 more addresses were listed, and he recognized them neighbors who'd complained about Kendra in the past. Narrator voice shifts to dry sarcasm, apparently. Mark was now an official enemy of the Ridgegrove Empire. The next day, Mark wasn't just rebuilding his fire pit, he was fortifying it. He laid new stonework, built a waist-high perimeter wall using fire-safe bricks, and installed 2 more motion-sensitive cameras, both with night vision. And right in front of it all, he put up a handmade wooden sign, not an HOA property. Your rules do not apply. Trespassers will be barbecued. Greg and Tiffany Moore rolled by on their golf cart and burst out laughing. Dude, Greg said, filming it all for their growing YouTube channel, Suburb Snoopers. You're going to be an internet legend. Tiffany leaned in with a grin. We've been uploading clips of this whole saga. People love you. We're calling it Fire Pit Freedom Fighter. Mark chuckled, but deep down, he knew it was only a matter of time before Kendra made her next move. It came the following evening. This time, not as a citation but as an emergency fire inspection. 2 men in matching blue uniforms from the Ridgegrove Safety Committee walked up to Mark's door. We're here to inspect a suspected non-compliant fire structure. Mark raised an eyebrow. You mean the one that was legally approved by the county fire department? One of them glanced at a clipboard and stammered, well, HOA guidelines say. Mark cut him off. I'm not in your HOA. Cue awkward silence. Narrator. Mark produced the fire permit like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. Stamped. Signed. Certified. He handed over a copy of his deed, pointing at the lack of HOA clause. And then, icing on the cake, he showed them a printout of the forged citation. Comparing it to his real signature, the two men exchanged looks, muttered something about just following orders, and walked off. But Mark wasn't done. That night, he met with Sheriff Langley again, this time in person. Langley took one look at the folder and let out a long, slow whistle. Forged documents, trespassing, impersonating a municipal safety official. This ain't just HOA drama anymore. This is a criminal investigation now. Mark handed over the folder. Langley leaned back in his chair. Let me guess, Kendra again. Mark nodded. And I've got neighbors who'll testify, plus video from multiple incidents. Greg and Tiffany have half of it up on YouTube already. Langley grinned. Perfect. I'll start digging. Narrator voice, meanwhile. Inside the Ridgegrove HQ, also known as Kendra's pastel-colored living room, things were spiraling. Her husband, Eli, nervously tapped his fingers on a spreadsheet. Kendra, this is going too far. Mark was never supposed to see that folder. Kendra sipped chamomile tea like she was the Queen of England. He'll fold. They always do. Eli shook his head. What if he doesn't? She smirked. Then we escalate. Hook ending with suspenseful pause. That escalation came just 2 days later, when Mark received a certified letter in the mail. Not from the HOA. Not from a neighbor. But from a law firm. It read, Notice of lien action due to unpaid citations. Total DUE. $1,250. Narrator. Mark hadn't joined their HOA. He'd never signed their forms. But now they were threatening to lien his property, a home he bought fair and square. And the kicker, inside the legal envelope, was another forged signature. Only this time, it wasn't just his name. It was his late wife's. The envelope sat on Mark Dalton's kitchen table like it was ticking. Certified, stamped, sealed with the name of Keller, Vaughn, and Lake LLP. And inside, a lawsuit. An official notice of lien action. For unpaid HOA fines, a total of $1,250 plus administrative late fees. Narrator. It would have been bad enough. But there at the bottom of the page was the part that made Mark's blood run cold. 2 signatures. 1. His name. Forged again. But the second. Lindsay Dalton. His late wife. Narrator slows. Lindsay passed away 3 years earlier. Cancer. She had never once dealt with the HOA. Never signed a form. Never agreed to anything. And now, here her name was scrawled in shaky ink on a fake document being used to take their home. Mark sat there for a long time. Quiet. He didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. He just picked up his phone. 10 minutes later, Mark was back at Sheriff Langley's office. The sheriff, mid-sandwich, froze when he saw the document. Langley set down his lunch. You're telling me, he said slowly, they forged your wife's name on a lien document? Mark nodded. You tell me what kind of people do that? Langley didn't answer. Instead, he picked up his radio and made a call. Get me the county clerk and someone from the fraud division. We've got ourselves a situation. Narrator. But the HOA wasn't slowing down. In fact, they were doubling down. The next morning, Mark found a bright orange sticker slapped across his front door. Property in HOA default action required immediately below it. In small print, failure to comply may result in property seizure under HOA covenant law. Greg and Tiffany pulled up moments later, filming it all. Did they just post an eviction sticker on a non-HOA house? Tiffany gasped. Do these people Think they're Congress? Greg added. Mark peeled off the sticker and held it up to the camera. They just forged my dead wife's signature, he said calmly. They're gonna wish this was just about firepit. Narrator voice. Now it was time to fight back. Not just defend, but go on offense. Mark hired a liar. A good one. Rhonda Bishop, a sharp, no-nonsense real estate attorney with a background in HOA fraud. First thing Rhonda did, serve Kendra Vaughn and the Ridgegrove HOA with a cease and desist order. Second, filed a civil suit for fraud, defamation, and attempted illegal lien enforcement. But that wasn't all. Rhonda brought in a handwriting expert who confirmed both signatures were forged. Even better, the document that included Lindsay's name had a print date of 2023, 2 years after she died. Narrator dramatic pause. Kendra messed with the wrong man. Meanwhile, inside the Ridgegrove HOA's Tuesday meeting, things were falling apart. Eli Vaughn sat nervously at the long, folding table while Kendra spoke with fake confidence. We're doing this for the community, she insisted. If people like Dalton think they're above our rules, the whole neighborhood falls apart. A few members muttered in agreement, but most looked uncomfortable. Then, the door opened. Sheriff Langley entered. Kendra blinked. Can we help? You. Langley tipped his hat. Just observing, and maybe letting y'all know. Forgery of legal documents is a felony in this state. The room fell silent. That night, Mark received an anonymous email. No subject. No sender. Just one sentence. Check pages 4 to 6 of the HOA expansion packet. She never had a full board vote. Attached was a PDF. Mark opened it and there it was. The Ridgegrove boundary expansion had never passed officially. Kendra had faked the vote results. The board chair had never signed. Half the voters listed weren't even real homeowners. Narrator voice intensifies. This wasn't just an overreaching HOA president. This was a fraud operation masquerading as a neighborhood group. Hook ending with rising music. And then came the kicker. As Mark scanned the email again, he noticed something strange. The file name from underscore inside. DocX, which meant someone inside the HOA had just flipped. Narrator, and whoever they were, they just handed Mark the key to burn this whole thing down. It wasn't the first time someone had crossed Kendra Vaughn, but it might be the first time someone did it from the inside. Mark stared at the email like it might vanish. A full, unedited digital packet, minutes, maps, and board memos all showing what he suspected. Ridgegrove's HOA expansion was fake. No legal vote. No signatures. Just Kendra's version of reality. Printed and filed like gospel. And now, somebody had leaked it to him. Mark didn't sit on it. The next morning, he met with his lawyer, Rhonda Bishop, at the county building. With copies of the email, the illegal lien notice, and the handwriting analyst's report in hand. They submitted an official fraud complaint to the district attorney. Sheriff Langley was already ahead of them. His office had quietly started interviewing homeowners. Then came the real twist. Rhonda handed Mark a flash drive. Check this, she said, smirking. A little something from our whistleblower. Cut to Mark in his garage, plugging the flash drive into his laptop. The screen flickered. A video opened, and there she was, Denise Hadley, former Ridgegrove HOA secretary. Narrator. Denise had quit last year, citing personal reasons. But now she was ready to talk. On camera, she spilled everything. Kendra's been padding vote counts for over a year. She'd hold emergency sessions without notifying the board. She personally typed up those fire citations. She even told me once, if we squeeze enough people, they'll cave and sign up. She paused in the video, eyes steely. But when she forged Mark Dalton's dead wife's signature, that's when I knew I couldn't stay quiet. Mark, leaned back, stunned. It wasn't just gossip anymore. This was evidence. Narrator voice sharpens. Rhonda uploaded Denise's confession to the public court record. But Mark, he had a better idea. He sent the footage to Greg and Tiffany Moore. Within hours, it was live on YouTube, inside the HOA secret confession from the woman who took down the queen. It went viral overnight. 100,000 views. Then 500,000 by morning. It hit the local news. Cut to Kendra, pulling into her driveway in a pearl white Lexus, fuming as news vans crowd her lawn. One reporter shouted, "Do you have a response to the forged signatures, Mrs. Vaughn?" Kendra shouted back, "Fake news. I'm the victim here. He's harassing me with his fire hole." Chuckling, fire hole. That was a new one. But no one was buying it. Not anymore. That evening, Mark hosted a backyard get-together. Tiki torches, music, s'mores, the whole block came out. Even some of the Ridgegrove members who once backed Kendra. Tiffany set up her live stream. Backyard freedom party. Hoa can't touch this. Denise showed up too. Quiet but smiling, welcomed like a hero. And then, right as the kids started roasting marshmallows, Sheriff Langley pulled up. He walked into the yard holding a thick envelope. Handed it to Mark. "Thought you'd want to see this first." Mark opened the envelope. Inside, a notice from the county zoning office. Ridgegrove's expanded boundaries officially revoked. Their fraudulent expansion attempt was now null and void. Narrator voice shifts to triumphant. Mark was now indisputably free. No citations. No fake fines. No late fees or threats of seizure. But he wasn't done. Not yet. Because while Kendra's empire was crumbling publicly, behind the scenes, she was scheming again. The next day, Rhonda received a motion in civil court, filed by Kendra Vaughn personally, alleging defamation, emotional distress, loss of reputation, and willful slander. She was suing Mark for $100,000. Hook ending with dramatic swell. So now the woman who forged signatures, faked votes, and threatened liens on innocent homes was playing the victim. Narrator. But this wasn't just a civil trial, because Sheriff Langley was about to drop something much bigger. The courtroom wasn't flashy. Just a small-town civic center with creaky floors, a state flag that looked sun-faded, and a judge who looked like he'd seen it all before. But the crowd, packed. Neighbors. Reporters, YouTubers, even Eli Vaughn, slumped to Rose's back, fiddling nervously with a paperclip. And at the center of it all, Mark Dalton, calm and collected, facing off against Kendra Vaughn, who stormed in like she was auditioning for a villain role on daytime TV. Draped in a stiff blazer, chin high, sunglasses indoors. Narrator. This was the hearing for her $100,000 defamation lawsuit, filed against Mark for emotional trauma, public humiliation, and loss of standing. The irony? Kendra had done all that and more to herself. Mark's lawyer, Rhonda Bishop, knew it, and she came to court swinging. First hour, Rhonda laid out the case calmly. She played the whistleblower video, highlighted the forged signatures, and presented Mark's property deed with zero mention of HOA involvement. Then came the motion sensor footage. Split-screen video. Kendra pacing Mark's yard with a flashlight, Eli pouring water on the fire pit. HOA inspectors knocking uninvited with fake citations. The crowd murmured. Judge Hafford raised his eyebrows. Kendra? She didn't blink. She stood and addressed the court with pure, undiluted arrogance. I was acting in defense of the community. This man's behavior was dangerous, reckless. His fire pit could have sparked a neighborhood disaster. Rhonda stood. Your Honor, my client's fire pit is county permitted, fire code compliant, and legally constructed. Not to mention, it's more fire safe than half the Ridgegrove grills. Laughter in the room. Kendra scowled. Then Rhonda dropped. The hammer, narrator voice slows. Your Honor, she said, holding up a printed map. This is the original HOA boundary certified by the county. She slapped down another sheet. This, she continued, is the fraudulent map used by Mrs. Vaughn to issue citations to homes she had no jurisdiction over. And then a third sheet. A signed statement from Denise Headley, the former secretary, declaring that no expansion vote was ever passed. Mrs. Vaughn acted unilaterally, Rhonda finished, and unlawfully. The judge turned to Kendra. Do you have documentation proving your expansion was voted on and passed by a board majority? Kendra lifted a folder dramatically. Right here, Your Honor. Ridgegrove's internal meeting records. But before she could hand them over, Sheriff Langley entered the room, narrator, right on cue. Langley tipped his hat to the judge. Apologies, Your Honor. I have reason to believe those documents are among the materials currently under active criminal investigation for forgery. The room went dead silent. Langley walked up to the bench and passed a sealed evidence bag to the judge. Inside, a copy of the same meeting record, this one, already verified by the fraud division as altered. Kendra's voice cracked for the first time. Your Honor, this is clearly a smear campaign. I have been threatened, harassed, doxxed online. The judge raised his hand. Enough. He turned to Mark. Mr. Dalton, do you wish to respond before I rule? Mark stood. Simple. Direct. No one made Kendra forge those signatures. No one told her to trespass or file fake fines. She did all of that herself. I just wanted to roast marshmallows with my kids and not be bullied. The judge leaned back, sighed, and spoke. This lawsuit is dismissed. With prejudice. Cheers. Erupted. But the judge continued. Sheriff Langley, you mentioned an open investigation. Langley nodded. Yes, sir. And after reviewing what we've seen today, I'll be filing charges for document fraud, harassment, and civil misconduct. Possibly more, depending on what else we find. Narrator. Kendra didn't say a word. She stood frozen, eyes wide, fists clenched around her useless folder. She turned and stormed out of the courtroom. Camera flashes popping like fireworks. Greg from Suburb Snoopers couldn't resist. He leaned into his mic and whispered to the live stream, and there she goes. America's most flammable HOA president, finally going up in smoke. Hook ending, with rising music. But even as justice started to roll, Rhonda warned Mark, she's cornered now. And cornered people, they don't always go quietly. Kendra Vaughn had lost in court. The lawsuit was dead. Her forged maps were exposed, and the HOA expansion officially revoked. But if you thought Kendra was the kind of person to bow out gracefully, you haven't met many power-drunk HOA presidents. It started small. A flyer slipped under Mark Dalton's door that read, Beware, your neighbor is a liar and a menace. Protect our children, ban fire pits. No HOA logo. No contact name. Just fear-mongering trash printed in bold red fonts. Then came the drone. A buzzing sound over Mark's backyard. Tonight's later camera attached. It hovered for 12 minutes. When Mark aimed a flashlight at it, it zipped off and disappeared behind the Vaughn's house. Greg and Tiffany caught it on camera. Tiffany posted a new video titled, Hoakaren sends spy drone after losing in court. 300,000 views in 24 hours. Narrator laughing. Turns out, America loves watching entitled people crash and burn. But Kendra wasn't done. 3 nights later, Mark came home from work and saw condemned spray painted across his fence. He called the sheriff's department. Langley came himself. They found paint cans in a trash bag. In the Vaughn's yard, Langley confronted Eli, who crumbled like a wet paper towel. "She made me do it," Eli admitted. "Said we had to fight back or lose everything." Langley warned them both. "One more stunt like this, and it's criminal vandalism. I'll be back with cuffs." Narrator. Meanwhile, Ridgegrove HOA itself was collapsing like a cheap patio chair in a thunderstorm. 3 board members resigned. 2 neighbors formally filed complaints. And guess who was voted interim president? Denise Hadley, the quiet ex-secretary, turned whistleblower. Her first move. An emergency vote to dissolve all behavior-based inclusion clauses, the ridiculous idea. Kendra invented to punish non-members, her second move. Publicly apologized. On camera. "I want to be clear," Denise said, standing outside Mark's home. "This HOA will never again overstep its authority. Mark Dalton was never our enemy. He was our warning." Tiffany live-streamed the whole thing. Under the headline, "New HOA President Apologizes to Firepit Hero Kendra Gets Fully Replaced." But just when it looked like peace was returning to Oak Ridge Lane, Kendra went full nuclear. Narrator voice sharpens. Around midnight, Mark's newly rebuilt firepit caught on fire, but not from a log. Someone had poured lighter fluid across the stones and ignited it. Security footage. Crystal clear. Kendra. Hoodie. Lighter. Hoodie logo removed, but her face fully visible. She looked directly into the camera, smirked, and dropped the match. Sheriff Langley arrived before the flames spread. Mark and his son had already put it out, but the damage was done. Langley watched the footage and shook his head. "That's arson," he muttered. "And she did it on tape." Kendra was arrested the next morning, charged with arson class 3 felony harassment, violation of a restraining order, and tampering with legal property. Her mugshot made local news. Her HOA Facebook page shut down. Her house, now the most watched location in the entire subdivision. Greg's latest video hit 1 million views in 2 days. Title: Karen Arrested, Arson, Lies, and Firepit Justice. But for Mark, the chaos left scars. His backyard, the place that once meant peace, family, and s'mores, had become a battleground. His daughter, once excited to light a fire, now asked if the whole lady was going to come back and hurt us. Mark hugged her close. "Not anymore, sweetheart. She lost. For good this time." Hook ending music rising with hope. But just as they sat by the newly repaired pit, Sheriff Langley returned one last time. He handed Mark a sealed envelope and smiled. "Thought you'd want to be the first to see this." Mark opened it. Inside, a court ruling. Ridgegrove HOA is hereby required to pay restitution for unauthorized lien attempts and legal harassment. Total awarded to Mr. Dalton, $25,000. Narrator. After months of lies, forged documents, drones, and drama, Mark finally had more than just peace. He had justice. But he wasn't done yet, because he had one final message for the whole neighborhood, and it involved the biggest fire this HOA had ever seen fully permitted. Of course, there's a certain peace that comes after chaos. When the noise fades, the dust settles, and the HOA villain has officially been arrested for arson. Mark Dalton stood at the edge of his backyard, staring at the newly cleaned fire pit. It wasn't just a pile of stones anymore. It was a symbol. Of what? Freedom. Community. And the fact that no one, not even a forged signature-wielding HOA tyrant, was above the law. The $25,000 restitution check from the court came in 2 days after Kendra's arrest. Mark deposited it. Didn't brag. Didn't gloat. But he did make one very special purchase, a commercial-grade, fire code-approved backyard pit complete with seating, stone grills, built-in spark screen, and even a retractable marshmallow skewer rack. Yes, that exists. He also ordered custom engraved bricks to line the circle, each one with a name. Greg and Tiffany. Denise Hadley, Sheriff Langley. Even Eli Vaughn, who'd submitted an official statement confessing everything and offering a tearful apology. One brick in the center just read, Lindsay's Circle. Let no one dictate your peace. Narrator. But Mark wasn't done just making a statement. He was planning a celebration. Tiffany posted a community-wide invite titled Firepit Freedom Fest. HOA is canceled. Literally over 60 neighbors are SVPD. Even some from surrounding streets came. Local food trucks lined the curb. A band from the high school played covers of 80s rock hits. And of course, the main event, the burning of the Citation. Mark had saved them every fake fine, every printed HOA notice, even the infamous final lien warning signed in crayon handwriting and hubris. He stood in the middle of the circle, holding the folder up. Greg live streamed. Tiffany narrated. Here it is, folks. The moment we say goodbye to fake rules, drone stalking, forged maps, and HOA nightmares. Mark smiled, lit the match, and dropped it in. Whoosh. Gone. Cheers erupted. Kids danced. Someone shot off a confetti cannon. Narrator: later that night, as the party wound down, Sheriff Langley leaned over to Mark. Word is, Kendra's still trying to get out on bail, he muttered. Says she was set up. Mark shook his head. Let her spin. The fire's out and we've got it all on camera. Langley chuckled. You ever think of running for HOA president? Mark laughed. Only if I can run unopposed with no HOA to run. Weeks passed. Peace returned. The Ridgegrove HOA, once feared, now mocked, had officially disbanded under public pressure and multiple civil complaints. All community decisions would now be made through open town votes, with zero forced participation. Denise Hadley. She formed a voluntary neighborhood council focused on actual problems like potholes and mail theft, not fence paint shades. And Mark, well, he just kept the fire burning, literally. Friday nights became a ritual again. SMRs, guitars, good neighbors, and no unwanted clipboards. One evening, as the stars came out, Mark's daughter curled up beside him by the pit. Is the whole lady gone forever? She asked. Mark nodded. She's gone. But the lesson, that stays. She frowned. What lesson? That when someone says they have power over you, he said, ask them to prove it, and record everything. She giggled. You sound like Aunt Tiffany. He laughed. Don't tell her that. Final scene: camera pans wide. The fire crackles. The crowd laughs. And just behind them, Greg raises a phone to the sky. Title card fades in. From HOA target to local legend. Mark Dalton's Firepit Freedom Story 1.6m. Views suburb snoopers. Channel McDrop. Narrator: and so, our Firepit saga ends. A backyard war. A fake HOA empire. A forged signature that lit a real one. And a man who just wanted to toast marshmallows, but ended up roasting a dictatorship. Mark Dalton didn't start the fire, but he sure finished it. The end.